Hey everyone, I'm Aaron Potratz.
And I'm Nathan Hawkins.
We are the Shrink
Shrink
Think
Think Podcast,
Podcast.
baby.
Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome to the Shrink Think Podcast. We are excited today because we've got an episode that we know is probably going to be really helpful for those of you who are going into a private practice in the counseling field, or if you are starting out in private practice, you're new, or maybe you're community mental health, or you're working some other job, and ultimately you're trying to move into the direction of working in private practice. But don't worry if you're not, if you're like just a regular old person, right? Not a special counselor, kind of just a normie, right?
A normie.
When I used to work in drugs and alcohol, that's what people would call them. Like, if you're a normie, like you don't do drugs, right? You never had that background. You're just a normie. Because let's be honest, therapists are weird. We're a little crazy. But if you are a normal person, maybe you're a client who goes to therapy, or you're just an average listener, you're just curious about this is still for you, because I think will provide some interesting behind the scenes information, and also just sort of like what is therapy about and what's happening, and how do therapists need to kind of like set themselves up and take care of themselves, but also like how to recognize like what a good successful practice looks like.
Yeah, and I don't think, just to be clear, that we're not, if you're out there and you're already in private practice and things are going generally the way that you want or whatever, this might not be the episode. Like, in some ways it's like, well, I mean, we're our audience in my mind are people that maybe are not doing it yet, and that's what they're aspiring to. Maybe you're in a university, in like a class in like psychology of some kind, and in your mind you're like, man, I kind of think I want to do this. And then or maybe you're farther along, you're in grad school, and you are kind of trying to decide if you want to do this, like, meaning, where do you want to work? Do you want to work in private practice? Do you want to work in community mental health? Do you want to work maybe for an agency that's not necessarily community mental health? I think a lot of people aspire to private practice because, quite frankly, people will say that's where the money is long term, and also that's where the freedom of scheduling is. Those are kind of the two big things. But there's also some people that are just not, it's just not going to be your thing. There's some things that you have to recognize about yourself in order to know if it is your thing or not.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about what it takes to be successful in private practice. I'm sure later on we'll like label that a little bit something different. We'll title it something a little bit different, but that's the meat of it. Like, what does it take to be successful, or how to recognize success in a private practice setting? So we've got a list of things that we'll go through. First of all, if you are successful, that means you are providing good therapy, you've got a good relationship or rapport with your clients, they're getting a good benefit out of it. So I think the first thing is, it's kind of a good marker of that is like, if your clients are talking about their experience with you or in your group or whatever, then that's a good sign, right? If your clients are telling other people and saying like, oh man, my counselor's great, you should go see Nathan, he blah, blah, blah. And then other people are contacting you saying, hey, I'm interested in counseling. My friend worked with you or sees you currently, and they, told me good things about you. That's a good indication that things are going well. And it seems kind of obvious, but let's not take it for granted, because if clients are not talking about you, if they're just like, oh, it's okay, in their minds, they're thinking like, oh, it's helpful, but I'm not really sure, then they're not going to be telling other people about you. So word of mouth is not going to be spreading, and you might be doing an okay job, but to be successful, you need to be having that kind of an impact where you're converting your clients from just like attenders or participants into reviewers. People who are going on review sites and like, I don't normally write reviews, but Nathan is such a good therapist that I just got to tell people about him. That's what you want, I think, if you're going into private practice.
Well, the other side of it, so we've worked with a lot of people over time, meaning what I mean by that is I'm not talking about clients, I'm talking about like employees, interns, that kind of thing. And there honestly is kind of I don't really like the phrase, but like an it factor. It's this idea of somebody that's just really easy to be engaged to. And I'm not talking about marriage. So like linking up. And I was working, some time ago one of my interns, I was like, you know, you have to go through internship. It doesn't matter what, when it comes to like getting your degree, you have to go through internship. So in some ways, you're literally trying out where you want to be. And this person wanted to do private practice. Honestly, knew their stuff. Good with the, you know, clinical stuff, right? Personable and everything. Like had all of that behind the scenes, but with the clients, that was not translating. I would hear things from clients that I kind of knew in the that were linked up, and like maybe I'm seeing a different person type of thing, and they would be like, they don't really talk that much. Like they felt like they couldn't get, and I addressed this, and it never really went anywhere. And so, and what I realized was okay, this may not just be the field, or not the field, but the place. And coincidentally or whatever, she actually came to me and said to me, like, I don't know if this is the right fit. Like, and she's doing a job, doing, actually, quite frankly, making a lot of money in a totally different part of the field of therapy, completely different type of a thing. But it was, when she said it, I was like, oh my gosh, that is totally perfect for you. Then, and ironically, it is kind of a private practice, but it's so specific and different. And so some of it's like, okay, what do you need to do there, right? So that whole engagement thing, how I like to try to explain it to newer people is the idea of customer service. So if you're a person who has had a customer service job and you're pretty good with the public and you're pretty good at managing like when these weird questions you get, and like, you know, you work in retail and they're like, oh, do you have blah blah, and you're like, this is not even the store that has that. But you don't tell them that. You're like, oh, you know what you might want to consider doing? And you like reframe it. Then they feel like happy that you talk to them. They have that vibe on the other side. That's the kind of thing I think we're really talking about, is being able, because a huge part of this in the beginning, you don't know this person coming in. You don't know them. You're kind of just customer servicing them. You're trying to understand. Of course, you're doing it clinically, right? So that's what I try to mean when I'm talking about acting as if you're acting like Aaron's looking at me like I'm a psycho.
Did we switch points here?
Well,
is this the second point?
I'm moving on to another point.
Okay.
Like I'm doing that and then I'm moving.
Okay, let's be clear so our audience knows. The second point that we're making is acting as if.
Like, yeah, so the idea behind that, when I'm talking about the it factor, the customer service, the next layer to it, when you're moving into it and you're there's a imposter syndrome, that thing that happens, right? You will automatically be sitting across from this person going, I think they need a counselor.
Oh wait, that's me.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I'm the person.
So thank you for that transition. But I will tell the person, and honestly, everybody kind of hates this. You basically, it's a very, who is that guy? Alfred Adler had this whole thing of acting as if. It's like literally in his theory base. And that's kind of what we're talking about is fake it till you make it, right? It's that whole idea of fake it till you make it. Because what you're doing is, I'm not saying that you just fake who you are. What I'm saying is I'm trying to give people the permission to, look, you are the expert in the room. You either almost have or already have a master's degree, okay? That means by the nature of that knowledge that you went and got, that you know more about the subject matter, and therefore you are now just kind of feeling your way through how to apply it. And so you're going sometimes with your gut. You're trying to use what you've learned and try to, like, ultimately you care about people, or else you wouldn't be doing this. So I'm not saying fake care, you know. You are just being there the best way you can.
I think one way I would say this, and it comes from an acceptance and commitment therapy principle, which is this idea that you have to do something, except that you just have to do it first, and then the feelings will come later. Specifically as it relates to confidence, a lot of people expect to have like motivation, or they expect to have confidence and like this strong feeling before they do something new or scary. And it just doesn't work that way. You have to do the thing and do it again and again and again before you have confidence, the feeling of confidence that, oh, I can do this. So the fake it till you make it is like ignore the feelings of imposter syndrome, the thoughts of I can't do this, and do it to the best of your ability with all of your training, your personality, all that kind of stuff. Do it, and over time, those other things will settle, and you will build confidence. I think that's what the fake it till you make it really means. There's another piece of that I think that's kind of similar, and that is being successful in private practice means, and it's interesting. I've thought often about like why do they call it practice? Why is it a private practice? Because you're practicing things, you're trying things out. Doctors do this, dentists do this. You know, a lot of people in the medical field do this. But what it means is you need to be able to build a plane while you're flying it. And what that translates into is you know that you want to build something, accomplish something, create, establish, you know, whether it's a program or a service or whatever it is. And oftentimes people think like, okay, I need to like, you know, take out a loan and I need to build it and have it set up. And once everything is construction finished and all the dust is, you know, been dusted away and everything's shiny and the bow is on the front, and you can come through with your giant scissors and you can cut the ribbon, open the doors, and everything begins. Well, that's nice, but that doesn't always work that way in private practice because things are not as clean as that. So in life, I think you just need to be able to roll with things. Start something, start a program, get feedback from people, invite people, build it out with the people's feedback as you're working with them. So it's kind of something that is more organic. So you need to be okay, I think, with that kind of flexibility and being able to work toward a goal, even if it's not finished and you're building it on the fly, essentially.
Yeah, in private practice, there's a lot more that you end up handling that you wouldn't handle like in a regular agency setting. And there's differences if you are on your own in private practice versus being in a group private practice that are pretty substantial. One of the biggest ones is all the administration. So dealing with, if you're by yourself and then you keep going, I'm just assuming you're doing private practice and then you get licensed, right? So now you're able to take insurance. Well, guess what? Who's calling the insurance companies to find out where the payments are? You are. Or what you're doing is hiring another agency to do it. And then they will be taking a cut of every single dollar, because those agencies, for those folks that are interested, they take a percentage, right? So they will file all your claims, but on average they'll take about 10% of whatever they get. So if your contracted rate for whatever is $100, when they file the claim, they are going to take $10 of that, right? So some people are like, oh, it's not worth it, I'll just do it myself. And some people are like, oh, I'm not calling those people. And there are better agencies to do that than others, right? So that means you have to do this thing called research. And that's separate from if you just went to a group practice. You're not doing any of that. All you do is show up, you do therapy, and you have to do typically some of the stuff that's different than what would be in an agency is when you go do the therapy, you end up having to do some customer service related things, like maybe you have to take payment. Maybe you have to not manage, but like be involved somehow in the money process, which you wouldn't necessarily have to do in an agency or community mental health. But if you were on your own, you have to do everything. In the group, you might just check the box and then you do your therapy and then you leave. It's a lot less administrative stuff.
So if you're going to move into private practice, I guess what this point of build the plane while you're flying it is, you might figure some of that along the way and hire somebody or hire an agency, farm some of that stuff out as you're going along. Like I might try some part of my administrative and farm some of that out for a time, and then continue doing some other parts of it yourself. And then later on, as you grow, you might then decide you want to hire a scheduler and have somebody else handle your scheduling. It's okay to not have that stuff right up front. You know, like, okay, I've got a budget to pay this person and that person and this person for these things. You might just need to go along and modify what you're doing along the way as you learn some of these things, as you gain more income and more flexibility and competence or whatever. And that you just need to be okay with that part of the process.
And in light of it too, that goes with the clinical stuff, meaning like part of the reason why it's called practice is because we're continually learning in the field, right? So you have to determine, like, well, what I want to do. I mean, you go out and you learn something. Oh, do I want to integrate that in my practice? And then you have to kind of take some time and actually map it out and go, well, see, if I do that, then that's going to mean X, Y, Z. I'm really trying to figure out group therapy, group counseling right now, and that will change the structure of some of the things that happen if I do that even in the group practice. It'll affect office space and all kinds of things. So it is this constant building scenario, constant like reorganizing in a way. I'm not from the ground up, hopefully, because might have gone the wrong way with that. But when you add in and you're accountable to that, 10 years down the road, for example, you may not at all be doing anything that you started with. It could be totally different electronic health records or whatever. And that's a whole other thing to be deciding. Your web page, how do you change that? Do you keep up with it? Do you hire somebody else to do it? All of these things are building it while you go type of a thing. And you have to be open to that. If that's not you, then you want to adjust where you work, literally, the place in the field that you want to do.
Yeah, so a couple more. These are kind of more like character types of things. I think that are there's like 3 of them here. 2 of them I would say like kind of can go together. Being a self-starter and then having some perseverance. So we're talking about faking it till you make it. We're talking about building a plane as you fly it. Some of that requires you to be able to take initiative, to take risks, to be a self-starter. Because at the end of the day, in private practice, you are the boss. You are the person who makes it happen. And nobody's going to do this for you. So you have to be the one who looks for the problems, finds the problems, looks for the solutions, implements the solutions, and then reviews, was that an effective process or was that an efficient use of your resources or whatever, and then make some adjustments from there. So being a self-starter means that you have to take the initiative to look for things, to see things, to understand things that you don't understand, to learn some of the knowledge and skills and whatever. Like if you don't know about KPIs, learn about what are KPIs and how do you stay on track of those and track those in your practice. Being a self-starter, I think, is a really, really important part of being successful in private practice, because it means you'll get ahead of the problems or ahead of the curve. And along with that, as we're saying, you're going to run into some problems and you're going to encounter obstacles you didn't know you were going to encounter. You're going to run across areas of knowledge and skill and competence in yourself that you didn't have. You didn't realize you need, but you don't have. And then you're going to need to go out and get trained in or read a book or take a course on finances or whatever, to learn about some of these things. So there's a lot of perseverance that you need to have to get through some of these difficult obstacles that you're facing. And all of that is just normal stuff for building a successful business. Building a business is not, it's not just you open, set up shop, and then, you got your lemonade stand running. It's like you got to evolve. You got to learn about your market and your customers and what your processes and how you're handling your finances in the business, your spending and your saving expenses, all that kind of stuff. So it takes a lot of perseverance, I think, to navigate through that and to not give up.
I think that really moves us into the learning and growing. That idea of having that learning and growing mindset. And I would even glue together that idea of developing good support and a good network. In starting, part of the reason why I was kind of not thoughtful or impassioned to have this talk is because honestly, and this is probably interesting to all groups, graduate programs don't really do anything at all regarding private practice and business. They have nothing. There's really nothing. They have some things here and there, but understand this: a business is something that it is a thing in and of itself. It is there are literally laws to business, meaning I'm not talking about legal. I'm talking about like supply and demand, stuff that's the same as gravity. There's just principles that exist, and it's important to be open to learn and grow at those.
Because along the way, it's like, I wish I had taken some business classes.
Yeah, I do too.
Right? And a lot of people say that. So it's kind of like, as you do private practice, you're going to get a associate's degree in like business management.
It just will kind of happen. So one of the things that is true about longer term private practice is you get isolated. I mean, you're on your own, right? You have to be so intentional, like more intentional than I wanted to be, quite frankly, in trying to network, like keeping things, because you don't know, like one of the things that happens in a group, I'll give an example. You walk out of your door for your office or whatever, or somebody else is out there and they're like, oh, what's going on? Then you're like, I was trying to figure out I don't know how well that last one went because I was trying to figure this out. Oh, did you try? Did you say? Did you whatever? And then now you're like, oh, whatever. And then, oh, what? Sometimes I do this, right? Now, none of that happens when you're by yourself.
You're just questioning yourself, like, I don't know if that session went very well.
Well, what do you say, self?
Yeah, I don't know if it did either.
No one here knows.
Yeah, right.
I need a good mirror. Yeah, in a Disney movie to make this work better.
Right. You were amazing. I believe in you.
Yeah, so it is really true that you've got to be intentional in these networks because of what we're saying. So it's not necessarily even like you're going to necessarily learn anything. It's just that you are getting to know other people out there. And if you kind of know yourself that, man, I don't know if I'd really want to do that, then probably that's not for you. I mean, just check the box and go like, well, I'm going to look at something different then. Some people feel like they have to at some point do this. Okay, cool. Maybe that's you, that you want to do that, but maybe you need to get more research. But
you got to stay connected to other people. It's I would say it's critical to your mindset, your confidence, because at a certain point you don't really know if what you're doing is helpful. You don't know if you're doing what you should be doing. So getting that feedback from other people, even if it's just a mirror, people reflecting back, wow, I love how you think, you do this and you're doing a great job. It's like, that's good feedback because clients are not going to give you that direct feedback like that very often.
Yeah, and in closing, I know we need to head for home, but this learning and growth mindset's really here. I'm going to give one last example with this idea of networking and all that kind of stuff. You get in whatever habits that you have and you're doing whatever you're doing, right? And then you happen to talk with somebody and they're like, oh, this happened to me. Are you using electronic health records yet? When I started, it was all paper. Like, I mean, literally.
Like on stone.
Yeah.
Chiseling into stone.
It was how good of a chisel and how fast you could chisel. Like, oh my gosh. Right? Oh my gosh. Wilma! Anyway, that's a Fred Flintstone joke. So they were asking me and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I do not want to do that. It was a major change, like switching from how your documentation works. There's no way that we're done doing those types of changes moving forward. And so that's why you're networking, and then you're open to like switching your entire way you're doing things around. That if that's you, if you are that flexible and networky and learny and growthy, you know what? You can have a great day.